Pro tip, when you're cutting these things, try to avoid the stitching, because that's miserable to cut through. You gotta have some good dexterity to get these in. It's pretty tight. This also doesn't help that this wheel, I think it's like has like 48 spokes. Normally they have like 36. So this wheel is actually kind of harder to get this rag joint on. These bolts, they're not going to perfectly go through these holes here. They're going to be kind of offset a little bit because of the amount of spokes I have on this wheel. Okay, so now here comes the real challenge. Getting this thing to fit in the frame. Now I was debating about cutting the top tube, situating that in there, and then have the tube come around and connect to the neck up here, and I'll do both sides. But I wouldn't have a place for a gas tank. I would have to make something for the gas tank and lift it up. Otherwise I'll be smacking the head. My next suggestion is, well, the next thing I was thinking is cutting the bottom piece out and fabricating a new bottom piece, just lowering the engine a little more. I like that because I get to mount my gas tank and the weight kind of shifts down a little bit. You know, the weight's not up, it's more in line with your tires. So when I got this engine, I'm missing an acorn nut. I gotta go get an acorn nut. And then I gotta torque the head still. I got the side cover torqued, everything else. I can't torque this because I gotta get the chain on. When I get the chain on, I'll torque that. I got inside, greased up the gear, just a little bit of grease. That's why it's kind of dirty, because of my fingers. Then I ripped the gasket, so I had to put some RTV on. Yeah, so it's cured right now. I let it sit for a whole day. I don't think it's crucial to have a gasket here, because the only thing that it's sealing is the grease that I put in. And really, there's no grease on these gears when you get these engines. So it's not really sealing anything in there, but I went ahead and just put some RTV. You know, why not? It had a gasket there, so might as well put something there. Whatever I do, I gotta make sure I have enough space for my crank. So I gotta have this engine sit over just a little bit. Luckily, in my pile of BMXs over there, I stole a sprocket that's a much smaller than the sprocket that came with this bike. Yeah, this is the sprocket that came with the bike, and this is the sprocket I stole off of one of those 18-inch BMX bikes. This one's a 30-tooth. This one doesn't say, but it's probably like a 40-tooth or something. But anyways, I'm going to use this one, and that will give me just that much more space in the front. into a problem right now. I didn't have the foresight of this. So this is my problem here. The chain wants to naturally go down like that, and as it sags, it's going to hit this piece here on this engine. I didn't realize that when I tilted it, that it's got a very specific angle. I was thinking about putting some sort of roller right here, but that would get real close, and then over time this chain's going to stretch, and when it stretches it's just going to sag in here, and then it can get caught on that and bind up and wreak havoc on the engine. So I'm kind of stuck here. I don't know what to really do, other than I could cut this piece off entirely. I'll have these two torqued down. I'll probably put Loctite on these two here. Should be enough to hold the clutch and everything. Well, to hold the little bucking bar in place. I think I can get away with cutting this out, so that way I get more angle here. Yeah, I didn't realize this had a specific angle. So just beware, if you're going to tilt your engine, you may have to cut that out. So besides that little problem, I'm going to have to cut and weld the tension on here, because there's no way it's going to fit, not in this tight little space. So they'll be easy. Straight cut, weld it on, I'll be fine. That would be easier if I went and took the spark plug out. That was a little harder cranking that out. But if you're going to do that, just take the spark plug out. That way you get no compression and this turns over real easy. I did that because I'm lazy and I didn't want to take that out. But now I shaved that down. Shaved it down as best as I can, and it works now. Doesn't get in the way. Now, losing that bolt, it should be okay, because all this cover holds on is the clutch lever and the bucking bar. That's it. That's the only force that it's under. And it's not under a whole lot of force. See, I try to avoid taking the pin completely out, just in case if I don't have any master links, I can go and pop this pin back in, and that way I don't need a master link. If I just wanted to connect this, just like that, pop it in. Yeah, these clips can be a pain in the ass to get into. You want to keep your fingers clear, or else you gotta pop it in. You'll end up gripping your finger, and that hurts. I'm speaking with experience. I gotta cut this piece off too. Forgot to shave this side down, so I'm gonna have to take this off to do that. Oh boy. Okay, so this is where I'm at right now. Got my side cover on, got my clutch all wired up, hooked up, got my CDI on. I did have to put it at an angle. Originally I was going to mount it up here, but this wire here, these two wires are a little too short, and then the wires coming from the engine are a little too short too. So I had to mount it down here. If I mounted it up here under the gas tank, the wires would be, they wouldn't reach. And I don't feel like cutting and splicing wires, so I just mounted it here, and I mounted it at an angle, so that way I can get it further down. Now the last thing I have to do, well, two things. I got to create the intake and the exhaust. And that will be pretty much it. I'll be able to ride this thing around, hopefully. Now this muffler is a little big. It's not like the other motorized bike kits where you get this little rinky-dinkly muffler. This thing's actually pretty solid, and it goes all the way through. It's probably not good for performance on a 2-stroke to have it go straight through like that. On a 4-stroke, this is no problem. This will be fine. I gotta find a way to try to mount this up. I'm thinking about extending the pipe through here and bending it around back, mounting it something like this. I could shorten this up and probably have the muffler in here, but I'm gonna have all that exhaust gas on this rear tire. Now as for the intake side, probably the easiest way to do it is make a little custom pipe like that, but the petcock valve is on this side, and if I route the fuel line through here, that might be a little too high. Yeah, that's going to be a little too high. See, I got the fuel line and then it's going to come back up in a loop around, and then I still need room for my fuel filter, so I'd have to mount it kind of down low. I kind of like this spot here, but the throttle cable is going to bend. Might be a little too close to the gas tank, but I do like having the carburetor kind of pointed this way. That way that air kind of rams in. When I go, if I ever do replace this plastic with an actual little pod filter, that'll look pretty cool. But I'll have it a little lower like this. That way I'll have plenty of room for my fuel line and fuel filter. I just got to create a complicated intake here. What's going to be a challenge is this square. It's not a perfect circle. I got a drill bit, I can just bore out a hole, but it's not going to be this square, which is going to suck because the gasket's also it's also that square piece. It's that square shape. Yeah, I guess it still would work. My performance wise probably might hamper it a little bit, but as long as I get this outline and I get the flange right, it'll seal onto this gasket here. It's seal onto this pretty good, so I won't get no air leak. First attempt at this exhaust. It's all good, but the pedal's going to hit it. I can't have the exhaust go through the back because there's like literally not enough room to snake an exhaust. When putting these fuel filters on, you gotta make sure they're orientated in the right direction. My previous builds, I messed up. I was pointing them in the wrong direction. The arrow, you see that arrow? That needs to be pointed towards your carburetor. so it flows like that. A good indicator is seeing that little magnet in there. That's to pick up metal debris. So just make sure that it's pointing in the right direction. The arrow is pointing to the carburetor, so going from the gas tank to the carburetor. Usually they give you little hose clamps in the kits. For some reason this kit didn't have hose clamps, but it'd probably be a smart idea to get hose clamps on this. Alright, you got a new fuel filter here, and I installed the fuel line. I got it going the right way because of the arrow. And I'm over here telling you about how to install fuel filters. Not even a minute later and I go bust them. I also got this fuel line here zip tied. Now I don't have it too tight because I don't want to pinch the line. But it keeps it up out of the way from any of the components in here because I don't want the fuel line touching the engine. Because the engine, unfortunately the engine's down low, so everything kind of hangs on top of it. So I got that zip tie up there. I also got my wiring all done. I wired it up. Of course, all black go together, all red goes together, except for the kill switch. The kill switch has a blue line. Now typically on my other builds, whenever I have a kill switch integrated with the throttle, the wire is usually green, and that just gets grounded out anywhere on the engine. But in this case it's blue, which I guess it doesn't really matter, it's doing the same thing anyways. But I got it going into red. Okay, real quick, before I go and take this thing out for a ride, I want to talk a little bit about this engine. This engine is a Zeta motor, but it's not your typical Zeta 80 100cc Zeta Max Pro, whatever. No, this engine's a little special. This engine is their Avenger 85, so this is a true 85cc motor. I think the bore on this is 52 millimeter. I don't know what the stroke is on it, but this motor makes about 3.5 horsepower. It makes as much as that engine over there. That's a 4-stroke. That's a 98cc 4-stroke engine, but it makes pretty much the same power as that one, but half the size. I mean, this thing is tiny compared to that one over there. Oh, by the way, my spark plug is gapped at 28, at 0.28, and the mixture is going to be 28:1. That's what I'm running. Now, there is a problem. This engine is surging, and that's because I got an air leak. Now, I brought it in here and I thought it was the throttle sticking on the carburetor, but it's not. Luckily though, these engines are extremely simple, and if you got an air leak, it's usually only three things. Either your gasket is bad or installed wrong, your carburetor is not all the way seated onto the intake here, and so it's not pressed against the O-ring, or it's the intake. Your intake is damaged. Now, I know the gasket was installed correctly. It's brand new, it's not damaged. This carburetor, it is in an awkward position, but it is seated all the way, and so that just leaves my intake. And it might be hard to see on the camera, but it's dry here up until you get to this spot back here, and that's where I can see some gas. Now, I thought it was coming from this line here, but this line's dry. There's no leakage on this line, so I got a wet spot back here. Makes sense because that looks like a crappy weld. I also got a leak back here too. I could see these wet spots back here. Only on right here where my finger's at, and right here where my finger's also at. But I haven't done a top speed test. I'm not going to do one until I fix the air leak and until I finally break the engine in. I need to break the engine in before I start doing a top speed test and doing some hard pulls. And if you notice in the video, I kept revving, releasing, revving, releasing, revving, releasing. Now I do that because that helps the braking process for these engines here. You don't want to, when these are brand new, you don't want to just cruise. You want to open the throttle and do this a couple times, and well, throughout the whole braking process. And that helps season the engine. It anneals the aluminum, and it makes it that much tougher. So with that, I'll see you in the next one.